We have multiple major updates for the Toronto Raptors in this year's NBA draft, specifically who they are going to land with the number 9 overall selection. Of course, Khaman Maluach remains atop the list in terms of probabilities of landing with the Toronto Raptors, but multiple names, especially if Maluach is off the board, are emerging as players that the Toronto Raptors are going to draft if they have the number 9 overall selection. So we're going to break down what all of these latest reports are, what we can expect from this Raptors team entering the draft, especially if Maluach is off the board, and frankly, why this draft is one of the most important in years for this Toronto Raptors team. So lots of stuff to dive into, lots of stuff to break down. Of course, over the past couple of weeks, it's been a lot of, the big fish hunting, the trades, and we know the Raptors, they are trying to land a big fish. That was the language used by insider Brian Windhorst in terms of the plans for this offseason. But KD, Giannis, even if we go full tilt, all in, trying to make these moves, they're going to be tough players to acquire. So getting this draft pick right in hopefully the final year of, high draft picks out there in the NBA draft. Hopefully the Toronto Raptors will be better starting next season. It is crucial to build the foundations to get the final pieces of your young core together out here at this NBA draft and get things right. So that's what's made this draft very important. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing happening regarding this Raptors team at all. But let's jump into it because there's been a lot of, buzz and chatter about Khaman Maluach and where he'll land. And Rafael Barlow has talked about the Raptors really like Maluach. He won't get past number 9 for them. So Derek Queen is plan B if Maluach is off the board. So that's coming from NBA insider or draft insider Rafael Barlow, who is a guy that's been dropping a lot of intel this summer regarding the NBA draft. Now, Derek Queen, I've heard mixed reports, mixed things about the Raptors' interest, but all across the board, Maluach is the guy that consistently is brought up as a piece that the Toronto Raptors want. I've talked about him a ton out here on the channel. 7'2", very athletic, mobile, rim, can dunk the basketball, can protect the rim, and do everything out there in terms of your big lob threat centers. He's a bit more mobile than a lot of guys his size. Frankly, would be exactly what the Toronto Raptors need in terms of a draft selection. So I won't dive into that here too much because he is also the favorite in terms of who will actually end up landing with the Toronto Raptors. So Maluach is still the odds-on favorite. A lot of the mock drafts still have Maluach going to the Toronto Raptors. And basically, even though there's been a ton of reports, I brought it up in recent videos, the Sixers have been looking at him at number 3. The Hornets have been looking at him at number 4. And then we also have this update here regards the Jazz could get a haul from the LA Lakers for Walker Kessler. So doing that coupled with drafting Khaman Maluach, the Duke center, would be an interesting thought. Not reporting, but there's been some buzz about this being an avenue that makes sense. Of course, the Jazz have the 5th overall pick, and basically every team, there's been little nuggets and little buzz about Maluach potentially going to those guys. And apparently he does have a draft workout with the Utah Jazz. So it's not a sure thing that he is going to be available at the Toronto Raptors selection of number 9 overall. But if he is, it's full tilt. It's expected that Maluach will be the guy the Raptors draft. So nothing crazy news, nothing, game-changing in terms of that report. But the other names that are peeking up on the board in terms of potential Raptors draft selections are very, very interesting. And the first name that we're going to take a look at is Kasparas Jakucionis, who is a player that's projected to be a top 10 guy, certainly in a lot of mock drafts. I mean, we take a look at this one. There's a bunch of different mock drafts, so don't take this as, gospel in terms of what's exactly going to happen. But Jakucionis is a guy that's projected to go 8th out here in this mock draft, and frankly, is a dude that would be very, very interesting for the Toronto Raptors to land. So who the heck is this guy? What impact could he have out here on this team? So basically, he played for Illinois. He's played in Lithuania, played a lot of, his years out there overseas, but he's 6'6". He's a point guard, shooting guard, kind of wing player, and he has a lot to be excited about. If we take a look at his actual stats in terms of what he's able to provide, even though doesn't have a crazy max vert or anything along those lines, basically last season at Illinois, he put up some very solid stats. 15 points per game, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 steal per night. Did have 4 turnovers per game, which is pretty significant. You might look at the 3-point percentage and be like, 32% at the college 3-point line, being a point guard, shooting guard. Is that exactly what we are looking for? Well, he does a lot more than just kind of the stats indicate that the stats show. So if we're looking at what Jakucionis is able to do, he's a big guard, right? He plays that point guard position, can obviously in the NBA switch to shooting guard if needed, but has a great feel for the game. He can pass. He's a high IQ basketball player. He's one of those players that can come in and just makes the right plays, makes the right decisions, makes their teammates better. And that's probably the biggest bonus and one of my favorite aspects of any NBA player, basketball player, just in general, someone that can really have a good feel for the game, make the right decisions, make the right feeds, and Jakucionis can certainly, do that at the PG wing position. So, he's a crafty handle and passing vision, so he's a playmaker, right? Like, he can do it not just with this passing, but creation, driving, doing all this type of stuff. He's a versatile scorer and floor spacer, so it's not just, a 3-and-D guy. He can actually create off the dribble, can finish in the paint, can finish in a lot of different areas, and has a strong frame, absorbs contact well. Of course, every, East European's going to get associated with each other, but Luka Doncic scores all of his buckets, just being able to embrace contact, having great body control, and, not getting knocked off his spot. So even though he's not like 7'8", finishing around the basket, he can take contact from bigger guards and finish well around people. So Jakucionis has all of these benefits, has all of these strengths in terms of being an impact guy. And frankly, is a guy I'd be very interested in the Raptors bringing in, despite the lack of positional need. Now, he's not a perfect player by any means. He's an inconsistent shooter from deep. The 31% from the three-point line certainly indicates that. He's not going to be Derrick Rose out there with the first step, crossing people up and blowing by people at that guard position. He does turn over the basketball. We saw that in terms of his stats and, average athleticism and limited separation. So, which limits his ability to, create that space for different guys. But he's a player that's certainly coming into this Toronto Raptors team, coming into the NBA, would be expected to just be a high IQ, just basketball player, creating for his teammates and be able to just be steady out there on the basketball court, making the right decisions and be able to create his own shot. And obviously, again, as I said, all these East European guys, people from different places, from the same spots, they all get linked to each other, but there is definitely flashes of, one of those bigger guards in terms of what Luka Doncic's been able to do, what a guy like even Josh Giddey's been able to do, in terms of creation, doing stuff out there on the court. So definitely a player I'd be intrigued by as the Toronto Raptors, GM. Of course, we do have a lot of guys that play that, wing position out there on the roster right now, already locked in, point guard, shooting guard spots. We have Immanuel Quickley. We have RJ Barrett. We have Gradey Dick. We have Ochai Agbaji. We have Jacoby Walter. We have Jamal Shead. There's a lot of guys at that guard position, but of course, with the top 10 pick, you want to take the most talented, highest upside player available, and then go from there. And, I wouldn't be mad if the Toronto Raptors end up going in this direction. But another player that, is on this odds in terms of lists, I've seen get a lot of smoke, a lot of people talk about, is Carter Bryant. People have been asking for breakdowns on him and what he's able to do. So Carter Bryant is a very, very strong defender. If we take a look at terms of his stats and intangibles, he's 6'7", 6'8", guy with a 6'11" wingspan. Only he's 19 years old, so a little bit older than basically in terms of the let's get the ages right here, so I'm not saying random stuff, right? Jakucionis is a guy that's 19 years old as well, so with the 6'7" wingspan. So basically the intangibles, the wingspan is definitely higher out there for a Carter Bryant, but the guy, it's 2005. It's crazy to say, but coming in out there for last season out there in college, only averaged 6.5 points per game, 4 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 block, 1 steal. Did shoot 37% from the three-point line. Is very much a 3-and-D floor spacer. So what is he able to do out there on the basketball court? As I just mentioned, he is a guy that's certainly, in terms of his ability to play out there on the basketball court, he's got that frame. He's got that athleticism. He's got that ability to really, just be one of those NBA-ready athletes. So, that is certainly there. He's a smooth jump shot. Like, the form looks good. The 3-and-D upside. He's a disruptive defender with great length. And, he's an effective rebounder and transition finisher. So, he's your kind of quintessential 3-and-D guy. If you're coming in with Carter Bryant, you're looking at this dude as someone with high upside that can come out there, play on the wing. He's not going to be a shot creator. He's very raw in terms of those kind of prospects. But in terms of upside, in terms of projections, in terms of what he could potentially become, definitely one of those very strong, athletic, mobile, hounding defenders that are able to space the floor. And obviously those types of players are very, very valuable out there in the modern NBA, but definitely a more raw prospect. He's inconsistent offensive impact. You can tell by his actual points per game, in terms of nightly performance. He doesn't have a great ball handling, so you might see some Damari Carroll-esque drives with Carter Bryant out there at times, but, questionable motor and focus. That's something I've read out there in terms of these, Hoops Hype, NBA Draft.net breakdowns and stuff. So we, of course, know Masai Ujiri very much values the personal side. Again, I'm speaking from what the scouts and the analysts are saying out there on that front, and then struggles with defensive rotation and contests. So while he does have that athletic frame, has all that defensive talent, all of that raw potential that can certainly get developed, especially with a coach the quality of Darko Rajaković, who can come in and teach and develop and stuff. That is something you do have to monitor coming into the NBA. Some of them need to be fixed in order for him to be, live up to that 3-and-D label, that hype that's coming in. He does have to develop in those areas. So certainly a Carter Bryant is one of those guys that it makes sense to be excited about as a prospect, right? The raw high upside 3-and-D floor spacing. It's more of like a high potential play versus someone that's a bit more polished and already has his game in order coming in straight from the league. We'll see how things actually end up playing out. Of course, Maluach is still the dude that's projected to land with the Toronto Raptors in terms of all these mock drafts. So we can get this pulled up correctly. Maluach there at 9, but I think the draft is going to be very, very unpredictable. There's rumors about the Spurs trading with the Sixers, trading with the Pelicans to make moves happen. They have interest in Maluach as well. So if Maluach falls to 9, I'd bet my money on Maluach becoming a Toronto Raptor. But of course, it's a lot has to happen in order for him to fall to that spot. If we have number 7, I think it'd be more guaranteed Maluach would be a Raptor, but we'll see how things shake out. Let me know what you guys think about all this in the comment section down below. You guys have the best thing as far as subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.